Hello and welcome to this primary election debate for Democratic candidates in Congressional District 8, representing parts of the West Valley, including Glendale, Surprise, Sun City, Peoria, Anthem, and Phoenix. This debate is sponsored by Clean Elections, the state's nonpartisan voter education agency. My name is Danielle Lerner, and I will be moderating tonight's debate, and we are sharing this debate as part of an effort to support democracy in Arizona through a partnership with the Citizens Clean Elections Commission, the Arizona Media Association, and Reister. It is a partnership designed to make candidate debates accessible to everyone in Arizona. So that means this debate and dozens more between now and November will air on a long list of local TV stations, radio stations, and digital platforms, including support from local newspapers. This is a shared effort between hundreds of local media brands all across Arizona. Now, the format of this debate may be familiar to you, and we have tried to keep the rules simple. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to make an opening statement, and the same for a closing statement. Candidates have drawn straws to determine the order of each of those portions of this debate. Throughout the debate, we will pose questions to each candidate, allow them to answer, and then make sure the other candidate has a chance to respond. Whenever a question is directed to a specific candidate, only that candidate's microphone will be open. At all other times, every microphone will be open. And thank you to voters all across Arizona who submitted questions for this and other debates. We've reviewed all of them to make sure every voice is heard. Now, additionally, candidates for this race will take part in a speed round at the end of tonight's conversation. And those questions have been given to candidates ahead of time. They'll have just 15 seconds to answer each one, but they have not been given advanced access to any other questions. And with that, let's introduce the Democratic primary candidates for this debate. We have Bernadette Greene-Placentia and Ray Keeler. Mr. Keeler, we'll start with you. You have the first opening statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Janelle, and thank you to the Arizona Clean Elections for having us. I appreciate the opportunity. I am a proud, moderate Democrat. I'm running for Congressional District 8 in the Northwest Valley. I'm running to try and get things better for our community up in the Northwest. I've lived in that district for 42 years. I think Democrats want a candidate that is a Democrat, a strong Democrat that can actually beat the current MAGA election denier, Abe Hamadeh. I think I'm that candidate. Some personal information. I'm an engineer, software engineer, so I'd go from notes. Our family came here when I was 6. I'm a product of public schools, grade school, high school, started college, enlisted in the U.S. Army. 82nd Airborne Division is what I ended up with. Vietnam was my enlistment guarantee. They had to pull people out. They were pulling people out of Vietnam, so they let me go airborne instead. I got to jump out of planes. They paid me for it. It was fun.
Mr. Keeler, that's 1 minute for your opening statement. Okay. We'll get more into both of your backgrounds in just a moment, but Ms. Placentia, you have 1 minute.
Well, thank you also to Clean Elections and Danielle for hosting this, and thank you to the voters for tuning in. This is democracy in action. My name is Bernadette Greene-Placentia. I am a lifelong Democrat, and I've been fighting for democratic values and principles for my entire life. And I was a long-haul truck driver and small business owner for 27 years, 4 million miles. I like to say there's no part of the country I haven't been to, there's no American I haven't met. And that experience has taught me that when I came to Arizona, I recognized the diversity here in Arizona is exactly reflective of the diversity that I encountered every day out on the road. It is the knowledge of my experiences talking to those folks and being able to reach and work with people, regardless of party, that makes me the most electable and most obvious candidate that can be Abe Hamadeh. Thank you.
All right, let's start by talking a bit about this district, District 8. It has been represented by a Republican for decades now. And so I'm curious, why do you think constituents are ready to switch course from their current representative after just one term and also elect a Democrat to this position? Ms. Placentia, we'll start with you.
Sure. It's quite obvious that even though I think we can all agree 2024 was a very anti-democratic cycle. Yeah, the current representative, Hamadeh, received 46,000 less Republican votes. It was a change election. People were mad and they were voting against something. That's going to be somewhat the same mentality this time around. As somebody who's worked with people across the aisle in my entire adult career, I realize that, especially to win back the working class that Democrats have kind of lost, we have got to present somebody that can reach across the aisle, speak to those people, but also that they'll vote for. And that's somebody that they recognize speaks their language, that understands and shares the same values, that knows the problems they're going through, that can say, hey, you know what? I take stuff out of my grocery cart. I shop for car insurance. I'm worried about the price of gas. I'm worried that my daughter has to wait for me to die to buy a house or get a home. So.
All right. And Mr. Keeler, your thoughts on that?
I think I am the most electable for this, in part because I'm a strong Democrat. It's on my street sign saying Democrat. I was an independent for 19 years prior to becoming a Democrat. All of my literature and everything is Democrat. I'm here to help because as an independent, I could select the Republican primary to vote against people that I didn't like. I thought that it would be better for us. I'm running to help our constituents and just make it work. American Bridge is a Democratic super PAC. They said that Abraham Hamadeh is vulnerable. I expect to be able to beat him because of my credentials as on all of my life skills that I've obtained. We'll get to those.
You both have mentioned your background here towards the top of the conversation. So let's go a little deeper into that. Mr. Keeler, you were talking about your background off the top, but what specifically in your background will translate well to Congress?
Let's do it this way. I am a software avionics engineer contract. I've worked around the country for FAA and making our aircrafts fly safely. They're very good at that. As a volunteer, I've been the government liaison for an 11,000 member nonprofit organization on science and land management and, on a large part, water. I've worked in 4 different countries, including the United States and 20 U.S. states, working as a volunteer for this. I know how to work under stressful situations. My work here in Maricopa County is part of the high-angle mountain rescue team, getting people that are hurt out in the field and getting them safely back to the hospitals. I can do this for Congressional District 8, working with them.
Okay. And you mentioned that your background in the trucking industry has really exposed you to many people across the country, your ability to work across the aisle. Can you give some specific examples of how you've been able to work closely with folks who may not share your particular viewpoints?
Sure. I was one of the first trucks to volunteer to go into New York City after 9/11, bringing in supplies. I was one of the first trucks to volunteer to bring water, of all things, into New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And when a lot of folks were sitting at home, I had all of my trucks, because I eventually started buying trucks, out on the highways running during COVID. When my truck caught fire and burned on the side of the road, I had just enough time to bail out and grab the dog. Somebody stopped, took me to the hotel, gave the guy their driver's license, paid for the hotel, said, I just live in the next town over. You know what he didn't ask? Who I voted for. And I didn't ask who he voted for. That's the America I know. That's the mentality I take. And whenever I go out and talk to these voters, they recognize, and it doesn't matter who they voted for. I'll fight for their right to choose. I just want the opportunity to earn their vote. And they know they don't have to vote for me because I'm a Democrat. Vote for me because I'm Bernadette. And they understand and believe in me.
Let's talk about their voters and some of those voters and some of their top concerns going into this election. Surely the rising costs of housing, grocery prices, childcare, all of that, those are really top concerns heading into this election across the political spectrum. And so what can you do on the federal level that voters would actually feel during your term? We'll go ahead and start with you on this one.
So one of the advantages of my career is supply chain logistics, and I learned how freight moves. I also learned where the cost that we see reflected at the grocery store, those hidden costs, a lot of them are buried in transportation. There's some items that we could just immediately, that would reduce the cost of household goods immediately by basically making some more transparency. And that would be reflected everything from the price of gas to the price of eggs. As far as, things like inflation, there's others more in-depth issues that I alone cannot do, but that Congress can. One, quite obviously, that we're all kind of talking about right now is this Iran war. We've seen the price of oil go up and everybody's, gas prices have gone up. Do we think that that's going to come down anytime soon? That was one of the big issues that folks voted on in 2024. People felt like they were being priced out of everything. They cannot afford childcare. Their wages do not cover the cost of living. The fastest growing homeless population is people aged 65 and up. Social Security is not solvent. People are scared, they are nervous, they're angry at each other. And we've got to have somebody that can go out there and say, hey, I'm going to do things that work for you because I'm in the same boat. Here's my ideas for solving this problem. This is going to be an immediate short-term solution. This is going to help you in the long term. They want to know that we have ideas. They also want to know that we have the ability to do that. Somebody who's been a congressional youth scholar like myself, I've been to DC. I've worked on these types of things. I'm working right now with Courage candidates. We're already crafting legislation so that we can start on day one with a voting block that ensures our voices will be heard.
And Mr. Keeler, what policies would you champion in order to bring down the cost of living?
The two biggest things right now causing inflation are the war and tariffs. Tariffs are almost 50% of the inflation now. The war is, if you noticed at the end of February when the Iran war started, gas was just under $3 a gallon in Arizona. Now it's over $4 a gallon. That's a 33% raise, and it was $4.50 a gallon. Just yesterday, they said that an agreement had been reached. It's only an MOU, and Israel wasn't part of it. Let's see how that works. It's going to take months, if not years, to get that back down if we get to that. The other one for inflation is the blanket tariffs. The blanket tariffs are bad. Targeted tariffs can be very good, but blanket tariffs just don't work. Why would we have a blanket tariff on Madagascar, who is our primary vanilla importer? They can never be a positive, we can't lose in that unless why are we tariffing them? We don't make coffee, except for Hawaii. Individual tariffs would be good. For example, EV cars coming from China would be tariffed away, should be just not allowed because they can do it much cheaper with their economy. Renewable energy needs to be increased so that would lower that long-term benefit is absolutely beneficial. Right now, solar, wind, and geothermal are all cheaper than gas and oil.
All right.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
That's part of it.
All right. And I'd be curious, Ms. Placentia, your thoughts as far as tariffs and how that's impacting inflation and rising costs currently.
Well, it's really killing our small businesses, and it's also impacting people's nest eggs. I mean, right now, the stock market has been on like the world's largest roller coaster. I guess if you hang out on Truth Social, sometimes he telegraphs when he's going to say something, and you can chime in or not. But for most of us, it doesn't work that way. And the targeted tariffs that we've seen in the past is kind of similar to trickle-down economics. It sounds really good on paper, but it hasn't shown that it's actually been effective. And at this point, with the uncertainty in the markets, I would say, you know what, why don't we reestablish ties with our allies and not worry about, imposing tariffs on people that are not our allies. Russia is not our ally. China is not our ally. I have no problem when we, tax those folks with their goods coming in. But the tariffs on our allies have really been hurting us. The tariffs are impacting our farmers. They're impacting the equipment. The truck drivers can't get parts and stuff, even from Canada. You know, and we do a lot of interstate commerce, obviously, between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. So I'm not a big fan of just, you know, saying, oh, okay, we'll have some tariffs here, some tariffs there. It doesn't work right now. Right now, we need to reestablish and get stable.
Okay. Mr. Keeler, in your response, you mentioned resources, solar energy, wind, water, a resource here in Arizona that is certainly top of mind, particularly in CD8, where you have data centers wanting to move in. You've got residential and commercial building just booming. So I'm curious, do you think that our state should be prioritizing rapid development like this in areas like the West Valley, where water, there's a bit of a long-term uncertainty there with that?
There is a big uncertainty on that. Let's touch on water just briefly, and let's use Surprise as the example. They have an ice facility that's being proposed. It's on pause. When the ice facility goes to full 1,500, as if that were the top detainees, they are expected to use 3.5 times as much water, 370,000 gallons of water a day. That's 3.5 times more than their biggest user in all of Surprise now. The mayor says we have no problem with water. Peoria is now drilling 2 wells to go 2,000 feet deeper. What we need is someone who can do binational treaties and agreements with Mexico for desalinization. There are 2 primary concerns with that. This is for Colorado water and supporting that. We need to make the water pie bigger. I know how to do this. I've been working on water issues in 4 countries, counting the U.S., and 20 states, mapping caves. I find where the water's going down and where it's coming out. This is one of my core values.
Okay, and Ms. Placentia, do you think that the federal government should be placing stricter limits on development in areas without a guaranteed water supply?
Well, I think that actually comes back down to the states. You know, in Arizona is the 7th state. That was part of the 7-state compact agreement. We do have, as Ray said, you know, the smallest portion of the pie, and we have the littlest say. Desalinization is risky. There's a reason why we have not done it on a mass scale. There's a reason why cloud seeding, you know, we don't want acid rain in Arizona. Somebody who has supply chain logistics, I'm used to taking goods from one place and taking them to another, and I suggested to some of our current elected officials, why don't we just build a pipeline and trade solar? We have 300 days of sunshine here in Arizona. We could be leading the nation in green energy. Trade that solar to states like Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, where they have plenty of water, and bring that water back. That would allow us to sell some of that water to, say, West Texas. New Mexico could have buy-in, Nevada, even California. These are things that we're going to have people who think outside of the box. The other thing, as far as like these data centers, I know that we just recently here in the Arizona legislature did pass a budget, and they did place, I believe, a 3-year moratorium. That moratorium was only on incentives for new companies coming in. And Arizonans need to understand that those jobs that they create, they're temporary. They're going to go away faster than our water supply. And we're going to have to come up with different sources of revenue, different sources of good paying jobs. And we need to understand that right now, those are water intensive. They're drawing so much power. You know, I think this administration actually proposed opening a coal plant here. We're going to, you know, fire that stuff up again. That does not help the environment. So we need to be thinking about smart, but we need to be thinking about the future. So I have children. I'm assuming Ray has grandchildren. They're going to inherit this.
Mr. Keeler, your thoughts on data centers and how she was saying, you know, the need to think beyond, you know, that 3-year moratorium and what happens after that.
Right. There are 3 things that data centers are going to be affecting us the most. One is electricity, one is water, and one is impact to our current citizens there. For perspective, in Arizona, there's 86 to 100 operational data centers in Arizona now. There's a statewide of those. In addition to those, there's over 150 more facilities that are either in planning or construction. And thank you, Governor Hobbs, for putting the moratorium on no taxes for the tax deferments, I guess you'd say, for the data centers. They need to pay their share of the bill. The data centers for water, if they are made closed systems, so the water, it doesn't have to be drinkable water, can be, if it's kept in a closed system, when it goes above boiling, it becomes, it would go as an aerosol, it's an evaporant. If it's a closed system, it can be recondensed and no water loss. So that can be taken out. Wait a second.
You're out of time.
Yeah, it's flashing. Yeah.
Oh, it's flashing red.
Yeah, let's continue though with this topic, because I know this is a very big topic, particularly in the West Valley right now. So we've talked about what's being done on the state level, but as far as the federal government, should the federal government be doing more to regulate data centers then? We'll start with you on this one.
Sure. I think that anytime we get into regulating an industry, we have to start looking at what's going to be the impact. And here in Arizona, because we do have, the water supply issues, the data centers, which may draw a lot of water, when you're in a desert, that's like, oh no. But again, in those states that I said that have a lot of water, that's not necessarily going to be the same impact over there. They may want more of those jobs. It also depends on who you have in the community and how well they are trained. That kind of rolls back into refunding public education and the Department of Education, because we want to make sure our students are qualified and get, high-paying jobs. And a lot of the data centers, again, those are temporary jobs. So is that short-term gain worth it of what we're going to get? And at the federal level, I think that we need to start looking at the impact across the board, the grid, and see where, these people are going in and what resources they're using. Because yes, it's a state, but we're the United States. So anything that does impact here could eventually have an impact there. Is this a resource that we can be shared? Is this something that we at the federal level need to get involved in? Or is this actually one of those where it is better on a state-by-state basis?
Mr. Keeler, is this a federal government issue or more of a state issue?
For water, it's a federal government issue as well as a state issue. There's recycling, there's conservation, but we need to increase the water pie. If we bring water in from Mexico, bring it up to Yuma, and then desalinate in the United States and coat the ground so that it does not leak into the aquifer, we create our own Dead Sea. We can do that on the Berry Goldwater firing range. It's on federal land. That way it takes away the environmental problem from Mexico, because putting brine back in the Gulf of California would just mess up their fishing industry. There's environmental things. And it would also mean that we would not have a security issue of bringing fresh water up from Mexico, where straws would go in for the 65 miles to take water out of it. I am all for this. I know how to do it. I've actually looked at data sites to places to do that. What it means, okay, so that's the water portion. What was the other half of the question?
Well, it was about the data centers. Should the federal government be doing more to regulate data centers?
Water is not a problem if it's a closed system, because it's evaporation. The water does not need to be drinkable. Same as what's on golf courses. The water needs to be a process to take salt out of it if the water's discharged. It's actually killing some people's greens out in various places. So yes, that's a distinction. But the water is not the problem. It's the electricity that they're using and the impact of the people. And that's where federal land can happen for leasing it for solar panels. Arizona should be the solar capital of the United States right now, flat out. It's still green and it's 5 seconds less. Let me go check.
Yeah, we can move on from this
it.
issue of data centers, because it's not just data centers going up in CD8 right now. We've got residential, we've got commercial properties going up. But at the same time, home prices and rents have also gone up. So there's a lack of affordable housing for many folks. And so what specific federal actions would you support to make housing more affordable? And how quickly would people feel the impact of those policies? Mr. Keeler, we could start with you this time.
I would support first-time house buyer incentives. That needs to happen because owning a house is equity. You're building your equity. The second thing is that about 30% of the homes going on in Arizona are being bought up by corporations, and those corporations are renting these areas out. I passed some of those while putting out signs this last weekend. And they're renting them out so people can't buy them. Therefore, they're charging rent, and people are not doing that. That can be worked from the federal line with legislation. From the state side, they can work that as well. That's a city portion and state portion. But we can support the reduction of large venture capitals buying up houses and then just turning them into rent. We can. Let's see now. What else can we do? There's just so much.
How specifically can you do that as a member of Congress? How would you champion that? So
what happens in Congress if we do funding to do, you've heard of tiny homes, small homes, where you have an HOA, you have a whole bunch of fans, they have their own issue, and they own the house. They get incentive to do that. They can do crowdfunding, whatever, and then they start building their areas. If corporations are left out of that, then people can move in, and as they move up from the and can afford more, they can. It's getting entry into the home industry, and an HOA, you have structure that how people work together.
Ms. Placentia, your thoughts on this? Do you think this is a supply issue, or is this the investor-owned properties? Is it both? What's fueling this?
It is a combination of things. First of all, those first-time home buyer programs, they've been around for decades. So I'm not sure if he thinks this is a new thing. We already have them. FHA has a first-time home buyer program. So does the VA. They're employer-owned, employee-sponsored home ownership, paths to home ownership, getting your keys. But as far as the tiny homes thing, that's great in some certain areas. Governor Hobbs, I want to say it was in 2024, they attempted to rezone to make the lots smaller. And they realized that the impact of doing that actually concentrated. It was almost like, okay, we're going to make Phoenix into New York City, and people were going to be more tightly packed into these areas. The problem is, you still have the same supply the same people wanting it, but the supply, those folks, whatever first-time homebuyer program or whatever incentives that they give, they'll just tack that onto the price of the home. That doesn't do anything. If you get $30,000, to put towards a new home, and then they add $30,000 to the price. One of the biggest things that adjusts for people's prices and their mortgages is actually the interest rates. And that is something that I think at the congressional level we could really pressure the Fed to say, hey, we need to adjust the rates to reflect what people can actually afford, because people are being priced out. The difference between a 2.25% and 6.25% on a $300,000 mortgage is almost $800 a month. If you are making $25 an hour, you might have been able to buy that house, not at 6.25%. The price of the home hasn't changed. So that's like the most direct way to lower the price and increase home ownership is by keeping the rates low enough that folks can buy into it. We do need to refund some of these first-time home buyer programs as well. That's a good incentive for folks.
Mr. Keeler, would you like to elaborate on what you said earlier about new home buyer programs? Are you proposing new home buyer programs or expanding current programs?
I'm talking about the concept of working with people in Congress to help support from the federal level to cities and states where if you set up the structure of people, say a 2-acre plot, we'll make it small, and you have an HOA that's set up, and then the people have ownership into those houses, we can set it up with helping from the federal level can help those people get in there, and one of the limiting factors can be not jacking up the prices because of everything. Its equity is one of the keys to making people actually gain in material, just flat out material wealth. The interest rates can be brought, if the interest rates can be brought down, the primary way to do that is to get the economy up and going. One of the things I'm still on green. One of the things I've noticed out pounding stakes.
Yep, we'll circle back to the economy. One more question on this particular issue, though, because I think it is very important, especially for this district. Many seniors in communities like Sun City West and Surprise, worry about rising housing costs, property taxes. And so what should Congress do to help older Americans stay in their homes? Mr. Keeler, you could start this one.
Older Americans staying in their homes is... What are you relating it to? Are you just saying they're out of money, or?
That could be one factor contributing to it, or, cost of living.
Inflation, okay, let's do senior concerns, basically.
Sure.
Seniors, their Social Security needs to keep up with inflation minimally. So the Social Security should be related to the inflation that's going out. Seniors need to have... we're talking about, you're trying to relate it to homes. I think their bigger concern right now is things like Social Security and not getting it privatized. Republicans are trying to do that. I would be just stalwart defensive to not having that happen. Same with Medicaid. That needs to be stabilized. They are vulnerable if it's privatized. There's so many different ways you can help seniors out, and some of those, how do you say it? Some of those ways have been removed by Republicans and DOJ in the last couple months, and executive orders, and our current congressman is supporting him, and I'm just against that.
Okay. Ms. Placentia, your thoughts on that?
We have 4 times the amount of seniors in Arizona's 8th Congressional District as most of the other districts. And as I mentioned before, the fastest growing homeless population is those age 65 and up. It's not just that Hamadeh supported cuts to Medicare, cuts to SNAP, which impacted the seniors in our district, as well as kids and families across Arizona. It's also the fact that Social Security, because so many of our seniors rely on it, and Ray alluded to this, it's not keeping up with inflation. That's where whatever their fixed income is, it's not going to change. They're being priced out. Their fixed income that maybe paid that rent that they were in, and now, I have a 76-year-old who sent me $20, and she was like, hey, I'm like you. I'm a driver now. That's her 3rd job. She gets Social Security. She's working as a cashier. Now she's doing Uber Eats and everything. At 76, because she does not make enough and earn enough to stay in her home, and she would be facing homelessness. She cannot adjust for the rising cost of rents. That is where I think that at the federal level, Congress can step in and say, hey, in the communities where you have residents that are on a fixed income. They do this in New York City, where they fix the price. And it is that price, and it's not going to raise. So that cost of living increase that they get from Social Security can maybe help them pay for their groceries, pay for the car insurance that they need, their medications, which is another area that Congress needs to have some significant oversight with reforming the ACA and making sure that we are competing on drug prices and lowering the price of drugs for not just for seniors, but for everybody. And that comes back to competition as well. There's too many conglomerates. We see it here in Arizona with the grocery stores.
Yeah. Mr. Keeler, your thoughts on that as far as bringing down prescription drug prices?
There is significant ways that we can reduce the health care costs for Medicare, Medicaid, and drug prices. One of those, I'm strongly supporting reducing the health care costs. We can require require the publication of prices of the medical procedures that we're doing. If you go and get your car fixed, you want an estimate of how much it's going to cost. If you're going in for a medical procedure, you should be able to ask about how much it costs. You should be able to shop between the different hospitals or medical facilities to find out about how much it is. What that does is it actually becomes a competition so that you can do that. We should for pharmaceutical drugs, we should be able to negotiate at a federal level for generic drugs. We need to be able to say the patent has expired. We need to offer that from the federal government as the most inexpensive way that's producing the same results as the name brand drug. They had the earliest.
All right. When it comes to Medicaid, let's kind of stick with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, things we mentioned are impacting seniors right now. Hundreds of thousands of Arizonans rely on Access, Arizona's Medicaid program. You both differ on the Medicaid work requirement. And so, Ms. Placentia, if we could start with you, what are your thoughts on that as far as changing the work requirement for that?
Well, I know that there's, right now folks been saying, oh my gosh, all this fraud and waste. Show me. I'm not saying that it does not happen, but that's also what this administration has done is said, hey, we see all this fraud and waste, so we're going to eliminate 40% of the jobs when all they needed to do was take a scalpel. If you identify the fraud and waste, then you figure out a way to cut just that. We can go through and say, hey, this person does not need that assistance. This person does. And that also comes back to hiring more people, not firing them, not letting DOJ run rampant through the federal government and just, Department of Health and Human Services and laying folks off, because these are the people that will look through those applications to see, does this person meet the requirements? Do they need to be working? Do they need to be on, getting some type of aid? Are they able to work at all? And you need those types of folks, and we need to hire those folks back. We need to refund SNAP. We need to refund Medicare and Medicaid. Bring it back at the minimum to the levels it was, in like 2024, before this all happened. As far as fraud and waste, I really have a hard time. Every single time I hear that, it reminds me of people who are like, hey, we can't do this because we think one person might take advantage of the system. Okay, that's not compassion, that's not empathy. I'm looking at the other 400,000 people that need our help. And I would rather us concentrate on helping those folks than worry that maybe, 400 or even 4,000 are getting away with something. We'll catch up to them. And so I really think that we need, at the federal level, to refund these programs, bring them up to that level. We also, as far as Social Security, because, Ray mentioned privatization, it's not enough just to stop them from privatizing it. We need to eliminate the cap on Social Security.
All right. And Mr. Keeler, your thoughts as far as the Medicaid work requirement?
I agree with, before you get there, I agree with the eliminating the cap for Social Security being stopped at a certain level right now. The work requirement is for 80 up to, you need 80 hours a week, or 80 hours a month to be doing that. And that is similar to what was done with Clinton as a Democrat working with the Republican Congress in the late 1990s, that many people went back to work. At least they go through the requirements. They have to be working or trying to find jobs. That's certainly, so that would be part of it. We'll disagree on that? Fine. I think that's at least a good solid check. As for SNAP, it's the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. The second word is nutritional. Why in Arizona are we allowing soft drinks to be included in that? Why can we go and get candy bars? Why are our people and our taxes going to get candy bars and Circle K's or our fast food places, not to mention other things, ice cream and the like, instead of making it nutritional items? Other states are doing that now. They're reducing that, and that started in October when the government was shut down. I agree with that. Arizona doesn't happen. It will help our people get more nutrition from their dollars coming from taxes. That works well. Basically, it's re-engaging. It can be waste run. Most of it is not. My son or my nephew has hemophilia, and he was on Axis, now SNAP, and he needed that immensely to keep going. It's light, and he is out working now, and it's helped him a lot.
One quick follow-up on this issue, and then I want to make sure we cover some additional issues here. You mentioned refunding Medicaid. So how do you balance funding Medicaid while also trying to reduce the national deficit?
I'm going to get to that really quick. I know you've never been a mom. Moms aren't taking those jobs because the cost of childcare here in Arizona for 1 year annual is the same as in-state tuition. So if you're working 80 hours a week, then it's all going to pay for childcare. That's one of the problems. As far as being a Democrat, I don't want people in my bedroom, and I don't want them in my grocery cart either. I'm sorry. Medicare
How do you balance,
balancing the balance.
Yeah, funding Medicaid and trying to reduce the national deficit.
There is a lot of areas where we can cut what we are spending and increase revenue without cutting programs. How come the Department of Defense never gets cut, but the Department of Education can completely be wiped out? That is a problem. You want to talk about waste and abuse, let's really look at what we're spending when we're buying all these airplanes or these outdated aircraft carriers. And I am all for having a strong national defense. I absolutely believe that. But a $1.5 trillion budget, hundreds of billions already blown, and now we're saying, well, we're not going to help people because we're going to cut childcare because we need to pay for this war in Iran just so we can get back to where we were, I don't know, 4 months ago and get the Strait of Hormuz open. That's a problem.
You touched on education there in that response, so let's pivot to that. Arizona continues to rank near the bottom nationally when it comes to teacher pay and education funding. And so we'll start with you on this question. What can Congress realistically do to improve Arizona schools?
Well, what we can do is we can establish baseline standards for minimum teacher pay. Also, bring back some of those programs that got eliminated, a lot of the grant programs that got eliminated that allowed teachers to graduate and come to different schools, rural areas and stuff, and bring more teachers, give them more incentives. And when they talk about the voucher program here, I'm sure everybody here in Arizona is familiar with it, one way or the other. Well, it's been suggested that we do this for universal vouchers coming from the federal government. I think this is a horrible idea. What I do think from the federal government would be great is if the federal government used some of that money to bring the standards of teacher pay. I think Arizona ranks 45th in teacher pay. We rank almost dead last overall, or 49th or 50th overall. We've just eliminated a lot of guidance counselors in a lot of the school districts. This is a problem. So we need to supply federal funds to these states so that every state, their teachers should be some of the highest paid folks. They're educating our kids. That's our future. That should be a priority investment right there. The federal government needs to invest in education for future generations.
Your thoughts on how the federal government can help improve and support Arizona schools?
Very first thing they should do, we touched briefly on military, is the $1 trillion budget is the highest right now. They're trying to raise that to $1.5 trillion. This is not an open checkbook for the military. I'm all for we're getting to education. I am all for a solid defense of the country. That $500 billion that they are trying to spend on that should in part go to education because of several reasons. One, teacher pay, we are the lowest. Arizona just had tax cuts again, and our teachers are the lowest paid in almost all of the U.S., the country. Our students are being affected by that. Our teachers are working overtime. They're taking it out of their own pockets. I am just appalled at how poorly the Republicans are trying to not pay our teachers. Let's talk private schools versus charter and religious and homeschooling. the dollars should go with the student. The dollars that are in public schools should get that whole amount, whatever that dollar amount is. Some of the overhead in keeping records, in making sure that all of our public institutions have the proper records so that they can certify that students have gone there. The public students should get all of those, because we as the state, the government contain that. We should, for education, I would really strongly promote trade schools and community colleges, and supporting those from the federal level, so that our working people can get certifications and trade authentications that they are the journeyman electricians, commercial licenses, et cetera.
Yeah, let's talk more about those pathways of workforce development. For many people, higher education is becoming out of reach because of the pure cost. And so are there things that the federal government can be doing to help create some of those pathways, whether it's trade school or community colleges? Can they be doing things to make higher education more accessible to Arizonans if they so choose to pursue that?
Sure. So I am obviously, as a truck driver, I did go to truck driving school, and I am a huge proponent of trade schools and vocational technical education. I think that should be, we have West Mech in the West Valley, and it's IVETS on the east side of the valley. These are great programs because a lot of the students can start these programs in high school, and by the time they graduate or within a year of graduating high school, they're actually getting their certification and licensure. This is some of the money that needs to be rededicated, coming from the federal government, into strengthening and building up, because it's not just that the cost is so high for higher education. There's a lot of kids that they kind of feel like that's their only option, and they're pushed into it, and that's not really what they want. We need to look into more apprenticeship programs, more internships, and those are with your small businesses. We should be giving more incentive to small businesses to hire and train students. We should be strengthening our unions, which are great at having apprenticeship programs, so that when people transition out of it, they get a good paying job. These are all things that we can do at the federal level, strengthening unions, not trying to break them, rededicating resources to secondary, education that is not just necessarily higher education. And also, as far as if anyone's ever filled out a student loan application for their kid, it goes off of the parent's income. That's a really tough pill, because what they say you're qualified for, you're barely making it. I wish my husband and I could have sent our 21-year-old daughter to one of our in-state schools. We couldn't do it. And a lot of parents are in the same boat. So we probably need to adjust that of who needs the assistance as well.
And Mr. Keeler, you did mention championing some of those workforce development pathways. What specifically would you be able to do in Congress to make that happen?
Set down criteria so that they become national recommendations for trade schools and community colleges to get the various degrees. For example, nursing was just brought down from a professional degree, and now they're saying that that's not a professional thing. That came last year. That just doesn't work for me. I don't think it works for a lot of people. We need to bring down we need to standardize trade schools. And if you're trade schools for electricians would be an example. Big electricians, not microcomputers or things like that, so that they can actually say that they can go from one state to the other, and these are the minimum criteria to be certified in Arizona versus certified in New York City. I was an EMT for 8 years. I had a state certification. I did not get the national certification. I was on the mountain rescue team, and we had people rated higher than that. But that capability is around. We can do those at those levels. Did I answer your question?
Do you feel you answered my question?
Okay, I think I did. That's trade.
All right.
That's trade schools. That's getting community colleges. Community colleges are more, they should be able to work with high schools in doing that, and helping like AP classes, only AP classes going to community colleges as well. The same with trade school. There's an overlap because people progress at different times. I think that we can help from the federal level to get those things done on a much more standardized level.
All right, well, we are now going to shift into the speed round. So again, these candidates have been given these questions ahead of time, and they will have just 15 seconds to answer each one. And so the first question, what is your most important issue on day one?
We just celebrated 250 years of our flag. We're celebrating 250 years of this country. Day one priority is to ensure democracy continues so we can celebrate another 250 years.
Mr. Keeler, your day one priority.
My day one priority is restoring the legislative branch of the national government to a co-equal branch of government. It's not doing that now, and frankly, we need to set that as the basis so that we continue on.
What is a win for this district that you believe only you can secure?
I think having somebody that understands the people in their district and is reflective of the people in the district. And that's what supporting a working class candidate, voting for a working class candidate, and having a working class person be their voice and their seat at the table.
Mr. Keeler.
I'll work extremely hard to affect Arizona's water stability. I will work extremely hard for increasing our renewable green energies with solar and wind primarily.
How will you balance the demanding schedule in D.C. with being present and accessible to the people in your district?
Well, as a truck driver, I was usually gone 3 to 8 weeks at a time, and we worked 70 to 80 hours a week. I was also a full-time mom, wife, president of the PTA, and that's just what we do. We'll figure it out. After the end of every session, we come back here, we speak to the people.
Mr. Keeler.
I'll stay in constant contact with my staff here in Arizona for Congressional District 8, as well as having monthly town hall meetings. If I'm in Washington, D.C., they might be virtual, but we'll have staff supporting those.
We've talked a lot about things that need to be improved, but what do you love most about Arizona?
It's diversity. It's what I said at the opening. It's reflective of everything I know about this country. Every person I've ever met out on the road, I meet them here in my community, and I love that because no matter where they're from, I can relate it back to where they've been from.
And Mr. Keeler, what do you love about Arizona?
What do I love most? Arizona is an extremely beautiful state. I've made 33 trips below the rim of the Grand Canyon. Half of them have been off-trail doing research for Grand Canyon National Park. It is part of me.
All right, well, thank you both so much. It is now time for closing statements where each of you will have 1 minute. And we do ask that we stick to that 1 minute so that we can stay on time. So Bernadette Greene-Placentia, you have the first closing statement. You have 1 minute.
So I am the only union-endorsed candidate. I'm the only candidate that has the support of youth groups, of party leaders. You cannot win this district without that kind of support. And that comes from somebody who's been in the community, fighting for the community for years. You cannot win if we go up there and we expect things to be different and you don't have the ability to do that. I was proud to be endorsed by Courage candidates. As I mentioned before, we're already working together so that on day one, when we get to Congress, we have a strong enough voting bloc that we can ensure that people's voices are heard on bills that will have an immediate impact as well as long-term impact. You need to have somebody who can articulate and speak to voters. I'm not a professional politician. I was a truck driver for 27 years, and I'm very, very proud of it. But I also know my people, and regardless of the letter after your last name, you're my people.
Ray Keeler, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Magic has happened. My closing statements have disappeared. Okay, here we go.
Wasn't me.
Here we go. I've lived in this district for 42 years. I've watched it grow. We are under some serious attack from several areas. I believe I can help, I can believe I can beat Abraham Hamadeh. He is the MAGA election denier. He doesn't live in the district. I've been an independent for years and years. I've talked with both sides. I have helped people out on volunteer as well as work things. I work in high stress and volunteer in high stress conditions. I will just do my absolute best. I'm very transparent. Everything I've done for 30 years professionally has been, I have to make those repeatable and open to the FAA. I have to get people out alive on rescue teams. I can work well with others. You get people together and it happens.
All right, thank you, Mr. Keeler, and thank you again for being here. That is all the time we have for this primary debate with Democratic candidates for Arizona's Congressional District 8. On behalf of our partners at Clean Elections, the Arizona Media Association, Reister, and Sneaky Big Studios, thanks for joining us.